Now I'd like to introduce our sponsor for this event, the Alliance Defending Freedom.
Freedom, our most cherished birthright. But what if your freedom was suddenly removed because of your religious beliefs? What if you were forced to participate in practices that directly conflicted with your faith? What if your church was targeted for discrimination because of its beliefs? What if your foundational freedoms were taken away? At Alliance Defending Freedom, we share a belief, a fundamental truth, that people have the God-given, constitutionally guaranteed right to freely live out their faith. And that freedom, that truth, must be defended. But what if the sun was beginning to set on the foundational freedoms upon which our nation was built? Now, more than ever, those very freedoms and values we cherish are under fierce and relentless legal attack, being drawn into the shadows by those who are determined to silence people of faith and redefine the U.S. Constitution. And these challenges are more than simple legal skirmishes. They are ongoing battles for the soul of our nation. At Alliance Defending Freedom, we are pushing back the impending legal dusk that is fast approaching our nation. We are unwavering in our commitment to see a world whose laws affirm religious liberty, both publicly and privately, defend the preservation of marriage and the family, and protect the sanctity of life. We know that a good defense starts with a great offense. So we are reshaping the legal landscape through unique training programs that empower the lawyers of today and equip the leaders of tomorrow, all to build an enduring legal force that will secure religious freedom for generations to come. With a collective winning record of nearly 80%, Alliance Defending Freedom's proactive global alliance has thousands of faith-based attorneys in your cities, your courthouses, and your communities, ready to serve you today. We share a common hope for what tomorrow will look like in America, a free and just nation that we believe lies right on the horizon. The sun has not set on the values and freedoms that we all hold so dear. In fact, at Alliance Defending Freedom, we know that sun is just beginning to rise. We are Alliance Defending Freedom, for faith, for justice.
Alliance Defending Freedom for Faith and Justice. You know, ladies and gentlemen, each of the panelists that we're going to be hearing from today is being defended by Alliance Defending Freedom. And it's not just a case study. These are real-life individuals. These are believers in Jesus Christ that are going about their lives, and suddenly they came face to face with a decision they had to make. Do we obey God or do we obey man? What are we going to do when we're faced with the question of compromising our deeply held religious beliefs? Well, your moderator for today's panel is a wonderful guy, and I don't know if any of you saw the event down in Houston, Texas, where the pastors gathered together. Those pastors that were subpoenaed, they had their sermons subpoenaed. Well, Todd Starnes was part of that panel of people to get with those pastors and be an encouragement to them. You may know him because he's the host of the daily Todd Starnes commentary, which is currently aired on 463 stations. And if he's not on your radio station, you will want to talk to him about what it'll take to get his commentary on your station. We added that to Bot Radio Network last year, and we're so glad we did. Our listeners love it. And he's also a Fox News syndicated columnist. You may see him on the Fox News channel. Author of 4 books, including a new one coming out this summer that's called Silencing the Lambs. Ladies and gentlemen, Todd Starnes.
Well, how are you guys doing? This is the post-lunch crowd, so if you're not off, if you're sitting next to somebody, just kind of give them a nudge. It is an honor and a blessing to be here with you, and I bring you greetings from the Fox News channel. It was snowing in New York City just a few days ago when we flew into Nashville, so I think the weather is a little bit nicer here than it is in New York City. And I do want to thank you for those of you that listen to my commentaries, and many of you read my column at foxnews.com, and I just want to say thank you. And a lot of you folks may follow me on social networking. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter. And believe it or not, they've got us Instagramming now, and I'm not a very photogenic person, so so I'll take pictures of other people and put them up there. But I encourage you to check that out as well. You know, as I was watching this amazing video from Alliance Defending Freedom, I was reminded of something. I happen to be one of ADF's success stories. I worshiped in a church that met in one of those schools, a Baptist church plant up in New York City, and we were forced to leave our school as a result of the law down there. But thanks to the wonderful efforts and the legal team of ADF, we are now able to worship once again in a public school in New York City. So thank you, ADF. Thank you for that. Well, I'm one of these folks that President Obama was talking about back in 2007, folks who cling to their guns and their religion. He called us bitter Americans. You might remember that. And I want to tell you in the few moments I have before we introduce our panel that I'm pretty proud to call myself a gun-toting, chicken-eating, Bible-clinging son of a Baptist. And I'm not all that bitter. I think I'm pretty blessed. And if you follow my commentaries, you know I'm fairly plain-spoken about what's happening in our nation. And I cover issues involving religious liberty. And I want you to know something here this afternoon, that you have a friend at the Fox News corner of the world. I accepted the Lord as my Savior as a young child. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and last year proudly became a member of the NRB, and it's so exciting to come here and to worship with fellow broadcasters as we advance the kingdom on the radio airwaves and television and through digital platforms. But I am here today to tell you that there is a war on religious liberty in the United States of America. And this war is not targeting people of the Muslim faith or the Hindu faith or the Buddhist faith. This war on religious liberty is targeting people of the Christian faith. My last book, Godless America, is the evidence that I believe demands a verdict. Rick Warren was in my office at Fox News Channel a few years ago, and he told me that this issue, religious liberty, would be the civil rights issue of our generation. Now, those of you who might have grown up in the South or you grew up through the 1960s, you understand the significance of those words. You know, I had just finished writing my last book, and I was trying to come up with a story to encapsulate all that's been happening in our country. It was about that time that Miley Cyrus committed an act of public debauchery just a few blocks from my apartment. You might remember that. The twerk heard round the world. It was also about that time that Phil Robertson, one of my great heroes of the faith from Duck Dynasty, got himself into a little bit of hot water with an interview he did with GQ magazine by defending traditional marriage. And it was interesting to see how the mainstream media covered those two events. On the one hand, Miley Cyrus was celebrated for her public act of debauchery, and yet Phil Robertson was castigated for standing up for traditional values. And I wrote the opening lines to my book. I don't know about you guys, but I sort of feel like a Duck Dynasty guy living in a Miley Cyrus world, where right is wrong and wrong is right. It's as if our values have been turned upside down. And the stories that you are about to hear in the next few moments, again, more evidence that demands a verdict. I have had the honor of covering ADF stories for a number of years at Fox News, and I so appreciate ADF because the cases they bring to us, the stories that we tell, are rock solid, and they make a difference. They truly make a difference. And I can't wait for you to meet these wonderful people that I've been talking about over the past several years in my columns at Fox News. What I'd like to do at this moment is introduce those folks to you, and they're going to take their seats here on the platform, and we're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about some of the things that have been happening in their cases, and we're going to talk about ways for you to get involved as broadcasters. So at this time, I'm going to invite the folks to come on up here. First, Kristen Waggoner, who is an ADF attorney, and then we're going to have from Washington State, Greg Stormans. From the great state of Kentucky, Blaine Adamson. And from the great state of Washington, Barronelle Stutzman. Would you please welcome these fine folks? Good-looking crowd, too. Amen? Yeah. All right, y'all can. Now, wait a second. You see, I'm a Baptist, but I went to a Church of God college, Lee University, so I'm a Baptist-costal. So we got to have a little bit more action here. So amen? All right, there you go. You'll get the hang of it. So I know it's lunch. I want to start with Kristen because there is so much going on in the legal world right now when it comes to religious liberty. Tell us what are some of the current events that you guys are covering?
Well, we have a number of cases that are pending right now, and at ADF we have been privileged to be able to play a role in about 50 or nearly 50 Supreme Court victories in the United States, and that's been great fun and a great joy because we get to serve with great clients like these that you're going to meet today. We also have 3,000 allied attorneys that we work around the nation with, and then we have about 50 in-house attorneys. Some of the recent Supreme Court victories we've been able to represent clients in include the Hobby Lobby Conestoga case involving Obamacare and the HHS abortion pill mandate. We also have played a role in the Town of Greece case that was decided just recently. That's whether we can have legislative prayer in our city councils and legislatures. And we currently also have the Reed versus Gilbert case. We just won this last term, which involves whether a pastor has the right to post some signs to get people to come to his church. Right now, we have two cases that the court has agreed to hear and we'll be hearing in the next few months. One of them is the HHS case. We call it Zubik, or you might have heard it called Little Sisters. We have two parties in that case. Those arguments will be heard in March, so please be in prayer for that. And then the Trinity Lutheran case, where we represent a church that operates a daycare, and they wanted to participate in a state program that uses tires, shredded tires, to resurface the playground. And the state of Missouri refused to allow the church to participate in that program, or the daycare, simply because it was operated by a church. So that argument's coming up as well. And then we have the Stormans case, which Greg Stormans is here today. The court is going to be considering whether to hear Greg's case in April, so that's coming up as well.
And that's a pretty good segue to introduce Greg Storman. Welcome to Nashville.
Thank you.
So you're out in Seattle, is that right?
Yes, Olympia.
All right, so fortunately, the weather, we created this weather just for you.
Yep, it's
so
perfect.
you feel at home. So, Greg, tell me a little bit about Ralph's Thriftway. I understand this has been in your family for, what, 4 generations?
Yes, for the past 70 years, our business has grown through 4 generations who have worked in the business currently. My grandpa, Ralph Stormans, started the business in 1945. Interesting story. He went to the manager of a different company he was working for, a different grocery store, and said, "Hey, I'm going to go open up my own grocery store." And the gentleman said, "Oh, that's good. Where are you going to open?" He said, "Across the street." and that's where it started 70 years ago. My spiritual heroes are my dad and my grandfather. And they told me as I grew up a couple things that really have always stuck with me. First of all, my dad would say all the time, "This is the Lord's business, and it's just important that we seek His will in everything we do." And I think about that every day. My grandpa, when I was about 13 and started working in our stores, he sat me down one time in his office and he said, "Well, Greg, you know how I want to tell you how you become successful in business." And he said, you have to take care of your customers, you have to treat your employees right, and you need to give back to your local community in as many ways as you can. And we've really practiced that over the past 70 years. Not all of my 70 years, I'm only 54. We've given hundreds of thousands of dollars away to local charities and organizations. We've participated on the boards and with the organizations ourselves, whether it's the food bank, local food bank, or the Girl Scouts, or or the local Catholic hospital that I was on the board of for 20 years. And it's a real blessing to be part of a 4-generation business that's been successful. And we're just glad that, we can be part of something that allows us to tell our story and encourage others that need encouragement.
Now, Kristen, something happened at the pharmacy involving the morning after pill. Take us through what happened.
Well, you have to go back 10 years. That's how long this legal battle has been going on with the Stormans family.
10 years.
10 years. It's been a long slog for them. Essentially, what happened was in 2005, pro-abortion groups got together at a national level and decided that they were going to pursue a national campaign to force pharmacists and pharmacy owners to dispense early abortifacient drugs. And those drugs are referred to commonly as the week after pill or the morning after pill, Plan B and Ella. Now, the thought process is when you look at the law, we don't necessarily win big victories all at one time. It's in small increments. So you take one case, you expand on that for the next legal principle. So if you think about why would the pro-abortion group start with the pharmacy or the pharmacist or the pharmacy owner, it would be because it's the low-hanging fruit. The ultimate goal is to force all healthcare providers to have to participate in the taking of human life. So that's where it started, was in a meeting in 2005 with the pro-abortion groups, and then it progressed from there. Washington State was a target state based on the voter constituency, and it had a Democratic legislature and a very liberal governor named Christine Gregoire. So Governor Christine Gregoire met in a private meeting with the executive director of Planned Parenthood and agreed to help Planned Parenthood push through a law through Washington's Board of Pharmacy. And that law said that you could not refer patients and you could not decline to stock or sell these drugs for religious reasons. Now, of course, it didn't actually say that in the law itself because they're too smart to do that. In essence, that's the practical effect of what the law did. Should I keep going here?
Well, I want to jump in here because and ask Greg a question if that's okay, because you had a choice. You could have just sold them. I don't think anybody would have known. Nobody at your church would have known, but you didn't do that. Tell me why.
Prior to the time that this law was in effect, it was May of 2006. My brother received a phone call, and a customer inquired about whether our pharmacy sold the Plan B medication and drug. And he said, well, I don't know. I don't really know how all the drugs we sell, but I'll find out. And so he went and talked with our pharmacy staff and our pharmacists, And they said, well, we don't really have a demand for it, so we don't carry it. One of our part-time pharmacists actually said, I wouldn't dispense it even if we did carry it because I believe it terminates a pregnancy and essentially is an abortion. And according to her, she wouldn't dispense it if we carried it. My brother and I and my dad sat down and talked about this and said, well, you know, really spiritually, our faith has informed us this is not a drug we can sell. So Kevin called the customer back and said, no, that's not a drug that we sell. And the phone call was over. He felt that was it. And after that time, then more phone calls came in and the process continued.
I want you to answer this question, Kristen, that a lot of these states have laws, or you would think they would have laws that would allow folks like Greg, Christian-owned companies, to opt out because of their religious beliefs. What happened in Washington State?
Well, I think you even have to go back to the rulemaking process to see why the Stormans weren't permitted to opt out. The governor exercised tremendous authority. She actually sent a rule proposed to the Board of Pharmacy, and the Board of Pharmacy unanimously rejected her rule. At that point, and during the process, she also consulted with the Human Rights Commission, which sent a letter to the Board of Pharmacy and threatened personal liability if they didn't change their position and vote in favor of this rule. They sent in test shoppers, which was what the call that Stormans received. They also, the governor, just days after the board rejected her rule, the governor held a press conference, used the media to threaten the Board of Pharmacy, saying she would replace them if they didn't reverse their position and ban referrals. She then did replace the board chair and then appointed 2 board members that were selected by Planned Parenthood. It was at that point that this rule came into law. The reason that the Stormans couldn't opt out is because, as the trial court found in this case, the one thing the law does is it allows referral in practice for almost any reason you can think of. Business, convenience reasons, profit reasons. There are all kinds of reasons pharmacies might not stock a drug. But it will not allow you to opt out for religious reasons. And that is targeting. It's discrimination, and it's unconstitutional.
It's disgusting. I mean, it really does sound
That
like.
too.
I mean, they're targeting the Stormans for their religious beliefs here. I mean, this goes beyond just political shenanigans. I mean, this is a full-throated attack.
Yes.
So 10 years. Y'all have been going through this 10 years. So where are we at right now?
Well, we are right now waiting for the United States Supreme Court to decide whether to hear the case. The Stormans actually went through a full trial in federal court, and they won. It was a clean sweep. We had 22 witnesses that the board heard testimony from, thousands and thousands of documents that the court reviewed. And the court issued over 100 pages in factual findings in their favor in the case. But that was appealed to the Ninth Circuit by Planned Parenthood and by the state of Washington. The Ninth Circuit essentially disregarded all of those findings and acted as if a trial had never occurred and wrote its own opinion based on a different record. And now we have appealed that to the United States Supreme Court.
So it's just a never-ending cycle here, but
It
hopefully
is.
going to the Supreme Court.
Yes, but I do want to point out that in all kinds of situations, and this is pretty common, the Lord can work through any situation, and He has certainly in this process. This law was put into place nearly 10 years ago, yet it has never affected one pharmacist or pharmacy owner yet because the Stormans stood and got an injunction. So the rule does not apply yet.
Because the Stormans took a stance.
Precisely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good man.
Greg, I want to ask you about that because this has been a 10-year battle. How has this affected your family, your business?
The words that come to my mind are spiritual warfare. And I never thought my family or myself, I never thought I would see the kind of dissension against our company within our community. And it happened with the pickets that were outside our store, which resulted in us initially losing 30% of our business. We were denigrated on social media. We were left voicemails and threatened. Even in high school, my kids would come home and said, our friends talk about this some, and they even had teachers comment on it very negatively at school. It was it was very difficult. On the other side, I'm also responsible for human resources for our company and also the financial operations. And over the next 6 to 7 years, I came to work and went home just trying to make payroll, just worried about, the results of having to cut employee hours and wages and benefits, starting with ourselves, and reorganize the company 5 different times just to stay out of bankruptcy. We felt an obligation to my father, who had retired, to continue his business, even though my grandfather passed away. We wanted this business for the next generation. What I experienced personally was the interaction with the employees and my staff, who said, "Hey, I can't make my car payment. My house payment's due. I can't. What do I do?" And they're going to turn my electricity off. And these are real conversations. I'm not making these up. And this would happen each week. And that was very difficult for me. Spiritually, I had trouble for years and years with this, and I struggled. And about 4 years ago, I was reading in Genesis 32 about Jacob wrestling with God. And I said, that's me. I am wrestling with God, and I'm not letting him take this over. I need to lay this down. And I prayed about it, turned it over to him, laid it down. And I want to tell you that one of the greatest things about this whole process is that he performed a miracle in my life. And at that moment, and since that moment, I've had complete peace about this. I don't come home angry, upset, and worried. I don't go to work angry, upset, anxious, frustrated. And I've had the kind of peace that God can give someone in any situation. The last 4 years of my marriage have been the best ever. So spiritually for me, it's been a journey, and I couldn't thank the Lord more for where I'm at now. And I know my mom and my dad and my brother and sister as well have grown spiritually through this, as difficult as it is. But we bless the Lord for that, and just know that there's a lot of courts out there. There's a court of public opinion. There's the U.S. District Court, the Ninth Circuit Court. They've all weighed in. Maybe the Supreme Court will weigh in. But God's court, and God as a judge, is the one that where we really want to win our case in. And we know if we just keep doing what he's asking us to do and follow that path, that he will bless us with the work that we're doing.
Amen. Amen. Well said. Kristen, finally, in relation to Greg, what is at stake here for the rest of the country?
Well, there's a lot at stake in Greg's case. First of all, if we lose the case or the court doesn't grant cert, it will be the first time in our nation's history, going all the way back to colonial days, where we as American citizens have forced someone to participate in the taking of human life. That's a line we have not crossed before, but we're poised to do so now. I would also say that there are over 250 vocations licensed in Washington state, and that's true for most states. The operating premise of the state here is that it can force the Stormans to do this, stock a certain product and tell them they must sell it, because they are a licensed business. Let's just stop and think about how many in our audience needs licenses to do their work. So that argument will affect all of us if it wins the day. I would also just say that the right of conscience and religious freedom is crucial in this case, because what we see is that the state has taken the position, as has the Ninth Circuit, that you can go ahead and refer patients to nearby pharmacies for all kinds of reasons. For monetary reasons, you want to make more money or you don't want to hassle, you want to avoid paperwork. You can do it for all those reasons, but you cannot do it for religious reasons. So the government has made a judgment that the same conduct motivated by secular reasons is okay, but religious reasons is not. Think about the implications of that for all of us in the future.
I want to move on to Blaine Adamson from Lexington, Kentucky. And if you've got a church or a business, Blaine's probably made a T-shirt for you. This guy is one of the best T-shirt makers and designers in the country. And I had the honor and privilege of writing about Blaine and talking to you over the phone and interviewing you. And I want you to tell us, first of all, a little bit about your business, and then I want you to explain how you integrate your faith into what you do making T-shirts.
Okay, great. Yes, we're your classic T-shirt shop where somebody comes in with an idea and they want a T-shirt for an event. And our main focus is church camps and youth groups, so it's a lot of fun because a lot of times they'll just say, hey, here's our Bible verse. This is what we want to impress on the kids, so you guys have to take it from there. So we go back with our art staff and we kind of create ideas. And our hope is that the kids will actually wear the shirts, not just put them in a drawer once they get home. And, obviously the reason that is that they'll go into the school systems or wherever they are with a message about what they learned at camp or in youth group or whatever. So we do company logos and things like that, but our main focus is mission trips and church camps and such.
So, Blaine, one day, somebody comes into the store or somebody contacts you and they want you to make a T-shirt for a gay pride event. Mm-hmm. Tell me what happened.
Well, somebody came in and they did ask us about printing a shirt with a message that I just felt like my conscience wouldn't allow me to print. Now, we work with anyone, no matter who you are, what you are. And over the course of our business, I've had to decline to print certain messages that I felt like went against my conscience. And, this was a special situation because they went to the paper, the mayor ruled against us, and we lost several customers. The University of Kentucky was one that we had been considered their top vendor for over 20 or 15 years at the time. And they pulled their business, a lot of companies. So it was a wild roller coaster. But based on what you're asking on that previous question about how do I integrate my faith, my belief is that as Christians, we should do everything with excellence. And for me, worship isn't just what we do in a building. It's everything we do on a daily basis, meaning Amen. It's how I love my wife. It's how I choose to watch TV shows with my family. And for certain, it's how I work on a daily basis in serving God. So, that's all a part of us walking it out.
It's interesting, when I was reporting on your case, Blaine, normally I call to get the other side of the story, but a lot of these liberals, they don't want to talk to me. I don't know why. And but in this instance, the guy from the the local Human Rights Commission actually returned my telephone call. And this guy told me something that just sent chills up and down my back. He said that you should have left your religion at home.
Right.
That it should not be. This was an appointed official saying, you don't have a right to bring your faith into the workplace. And so, Kristen, I want you to tell us where we are in Blaine's case. Tell us what happened.
Well, Blaine, we represented Blaine, and it went to what's commonly called the Human Rights Commission, which is basically a board that decided his case, and we lost before the commission, and they said that Blaine needed to check his faith at the door of his workplace. We appealed that ruling to the circuit court in Kentucky, and I'm very pleased to report we won the case. So the court ruled that Blaine absolutely has the right to engage in expression that's consistent with his faith, and also the right to remain silent on expression that isn't consistent with his faith. That was appealed, though, by this Human Rights Commission, and so right now the case is pending before the Kentucky Court of Appeals, and we filed our opening brief just this month. So that case will proceed through the Kentucky appellate system now. But it's nice to go in with a win, I can tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Blaine, I want to ask you, you went through a whole lot. Just like Greg, this is the standard protocol, it seems, with these folks, is they bully you, they target you. I want to ask, with everything that you've gone through and knowing what you know, would you go back, would you do anything different?
No, I don't believe so, because God hasn't changed, and I guess that's really my perspective, that he calls us in his word. He promises one thing, not that we like to talk about it, that we'll suffer for his name's sake. And so the word hasn't changed, so I can't change on my position. It's my perspective on that. So that's an easy answer, but that's it. No, I can't imagine changing my position for any reason.
Kristen, when you when you look at cases like Blaine's, I wasn't even aware that many communities had these human rights commissions, and they wield a considerable amount of power. Right. And these are not elected positions. These are appointed positions, and I suspect that many of the folks here in the audience, their towns and communities have those commissions.
Yes, they
so
do.
Could you talk briefly about that and give us perhaps a word of warning about what we should be watching out for?
Well, I would encourage you, we have to get involved in our communities. I mean, these positions are appointed usually by the governor of the state. They also have similar ones even at the county level. So when you hear about maybe laws that might be pending about sexual orientation, gender identity, non-discrimination ordinances is what they're called. They can be adopted in your cities, they can be adopted in your counties, or they can be adopted at the state level. That should be a big red flag to you that you know these laws are not about non-discrimination. In fact, there is not one case in the United States right now that's being litigated where someone was denied service just because they said they were gay or lesbian. Not one single case, but you wouldn't know that from broadcasters who aren't a part of the NRB. And in terms of being involved, you can have tremendous influence by showing up at those hearings, by providing community testimony, and also influencing through the voter election process. Who sits on those boards? Because if you lose at the Human Rights Commission level, you can appeal, but you're stuck with the record that was before these lay people that weren't even elected to their positions.
So again, folks, it's important for you to get involved in your communities and understand what's at stake here. And again, we have a responsibility as believers to be citizens. We have to get out there and vote. We have to participate in what's happening in the public marketplace. And if we don't, sometimes some really bad things can happen. So this is a great word of caution for all of us. I want to move on from the state of Kentucky back out to the state of Washington. You guys should open like a bureau out there, an ADF bureau.
It's the left side.
Yes, indeedy. I want to introduce y'all to just one of the sweetest ladies I've got to know in my time at Fox News. Her name is Barronelle Stutzman, and she is the owner of Arlene's Flowers. And Barronelle, what I'm most impressed with is your family. So tell us how many grandchildren you have.
We have 22 grandchildren and 3.5 great-grandchildren.
Oh my goodness, that is pretty spectacular. I think that's worthy of a round of applause.
I didn't do it.
So tell us about Arlene's Flowers. It was named after your mother, is that right?
No, actually, my mom bought it from a woman named Arlene.
Ah, okay.
And then she had it for about 25 years, and then we bought it from her when she got Alzheimer's. And it's just a small little flower shop in Richland, Washington. And we have about 10 employees, and we consider it our mission field. When people come in and they want things for their birthdays or their anniversaries, we share with them in their celebrations, and we share with them in their sorrows. And we have like third generation now coming in, and so they're very special people. They aren't just customers, and it's a great blessing to be able to create something that's different and unique for them. And when people come in for funerals, we like to custom make arrangements for them. Maybe they like to fish, so we'll put a fishing pole in the arrangement. When people come in for weddings, it's like our own child. You sit with them, you talk to them about their lives, how they met each other, why they got engaged, and it's a long process. And we want to celebrate with them and make them feel that their day is special, and we want to make it special.
One of those longtime customers of yours, a young man by the name of Rob, came in one day, and I want you to tell us what happened, because it really sets up the story of why you were here at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention.
Rob was a customer of ours for 10 years, and he's one of the gentlemen who's suing us. And he would come in for all types of events for his birthday or for special parties, and he had a really creative mind, and I loved working with him because he let me arrange out of the box. And he would come in and pick out these unusual vases and things and just say, do your thing. And so when he came in to talk to me about his wedding, before we got too far, I just put my hands on his, and I said, Rob, I'm sorry I can't do your wedding because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. And he says, I understand. He said, I was hoping my mom would walk me down the aisle, but I don't know if she would. And we talked about how he got engaged and why they decided to get married. We talked about why it was important to him to get married. And then because of Rob, and because I love him, but because also I love Christ, I could not create something for him that would go against my belief, and dishonoring Christ. So he asked me for the name of 3 other florists, which I gave him, and we hugged each other, and Rob left.
You've been accused of refusing service based on a customer's sexual orientation. At least that's what it's claimed. That's what the claims are based on. How do you respond to that?
Well, I waited on Rob for 10 years, so that sort of takes that out the window. If Rob walked into my store tomorrow, I would hug him, I would catch up on his life, and I would wait on him for another 10 years. It didn't matter to me that Rob was gay. What mattered to me is that my faith teaches me that marriage is between a man and a woman. And they can't take that away.
Kristen, I want you to tell us what happened after Rob left the flower shop.
Well, after Rob left, Barronelle went home for the day, and within the next week, she answered a knock at her door and received a certified letter from the Attorney General of the state of Washington. And essentially, that letter told her, you will either do same-sex wedding ceremonies or we will sue you. And so Barronelle and Daryl, her husband, prayed about it, thought about it, and made the decision that they could not violate their religious convictions. And so the Attorney General, without even having a complaint from Rob, there was no complaint filed or made by that same-sex couple at that time, all on his own, he decided to go ahead and sue her. Later, the ACLU heard and contacted Rob, and now Rob and the couple have sued and are represented by the ACLU as well. One of the things that's particularly unique about Barronelle's case is the spiteful nature with which they're pursuing her. They didn't just sue Arlene's Flowers, the corporate entity, but they chose to sue Barronelle personally, meaning all of her personal assets are at risk if she loses this lawsuit. She very well may lose everything.
Do you understand the significance of what she just said? Barronelle here, it's not just about her business, it's about her home, her life savings, everything, simply for holding to her religious beliefs. I mean, this is happening in the United States of America, folks. It's just simply outrageous. And this has been one of the stories that I think has just made me righteously indignant. Is that an appropriate word to use? It just really gets me fired up. And it really got me fired up when I heard what they were trying to do out there. So where are we at in this process here with Barronelle?
Well, we had a summary judgment hearing at the trial court level in her city, and we lost that before the judge. That was appealed. We appealed it to the Washington State Supreme Court. And right now we're waiting to hear if the court's going to grant that case and hear it directly. We expect to know that by early next week. All the briefs have been filed in the case.
And again, is this something that could eventually wind up at the Supreme Court?
Yes, it's very likely. One of these cases is going to have to go before the Supreme Court. It's just a matter of which one.
And it seems to me, though, that, again, I keep going back to when they were, trying to convince us that when the Supreme Court was redefining marriage, that it wasn't going to impact any Americans at all. You live your life the way you want to live your life. You run your business the way you run your business. Well, it's pretty evident that that is not exactly the case, is it, folks? Not at all. Barronelle, you've got a big platform here, a lot of broadcasters from around the country. What is the message that you want to convey to America?
We need to stand up now. It's me today, but it'll be you tomorrow. And when our grandkids come and ask us why we don't have a free America anymore, we would simply have to say we did nothing. If we don't stand now, we will have nothing to stand for. I encourage you to vote, to get out. There's only 1/3 of evangelicals that even vote. Get on your government committees, run for city council. Don't sit quietly and say, so sorry this is happening to you, because it could be you tomorrow.
Thank you, Barronelle. These are... These are stories that you are not going to see on the national news reports, and that's one of the reasons I'm so thankful that Fox News allows me to write about these issues and to talk about them in our radio commentaries. If you asked me who my heroes of the faith are, it would be individuals like Blaine and Greg and Barronelle. They're standing up for their faith no matter the consequence. They're standing firm in the faith. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing that and the inspiration that you are to this next generation of young believers that are coming up, knowing that sometimes there is a price to pay, but God is good and God is faithful. Amen. I want to ask you in our final moments here, Kristen, I remember I asked Barronelle a question in our interview, and she didn't know me from Adam when I called, and I understand a lot of folks are hesitant to talk to the media. I get that. One time I actually had a senator, I was calling a senator, and he didn't realize, I don't know what was going through his mind, but he said, hello, and I said, this is Todd Starnes from Fox News. He goes, what have I done? So they kind of, they get a little nervous. So, but anyway, I asked Barronelle the question I'm about to ask you. I said, why didn't you just provide the flowers? Because nobody would know. And I remember this like it happened yesterday. She said to me over the telephone, I could imagine, Barronelle, that you're wagging your finger at me. She goes, young man, who would you rather follow, God or the government? And I think that was a great, great answer. And I want to ask you that question, Kristen. What do you say to those people who say, you know what, it's just a T-shirt. It's not your prescription.
Right.
It's just some flowers. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I think the first thing I try to, if someone that's asking that has some kind of basic misunderstanding about what really is at stake, so I think educating them is important. And what I usually would start with is something like, we sink or swim together. Wherever you draw your line, whether it's based on faith or some moral system, there's a line that you have. And if this precedent goes against Barronelle or Greg or Blaine, all of us are going to be affected. When you think about the right of conscience, it's one of the greatest contributions we've made as a nation to the world, protecting that right. It gives the religious and the non-religious alike the option of pursuing what is life about, what is our purpose, why are we created, and then the ability to live consistently with that. Think about what America would be like if you didn't have the ability to live consistent with your value system. So that's some of what I say. It's more than just the T-shirt or the flowers, it's the principle. And I do think it's important to remember that if you even look at the social data and the research on this, countries that don't protect the right of conscience are countries that are typically impoverished. They have more war. How are their women and children doing? They're not protected. They don't have freedom of the press like we have here. And frankly, civil liberties travel together, always. Again, civil liberties travel together. So if you're concerned about press, you're concerned about the economy or the free enterprise system, all of those things, if you lose the right of conscience here, you're going to see those other freedoms erode. So it's not just the T-shirt or the flowers.
But one of the big arguments that we do see in the liberal press and the mainstream media is that, you know what, these guys have an obligation. They're open for business. They've got a responsibility. They've got a duty to serve everybody who walks into that door equally. What do you say to that?
Well, I say if you actually listen and know their stories, there's no way you can walk away and think that they don't serve everyone equally. Barronelle has served Rob for almost a decade. It was an event. This is about the message that you're having to promote. It's about an action that they're being compelled to take on their own. It's not about someone getting a hamburger or a piece of cake. It is much bigger than that. It's participating in something that violates the core of who you are.
You know, I cover these stories all the time. At least once or twice a week, I'm getting a religious liberty story that's coming into Fox News. But a lot of folks would say, you know what, these are just isolated cases. I mean, there are tens of millions of people who live in America, and we've got 3 folks up here. So I'm going to ask you this question point blank, Kristen. Is there an attack on faith in the public marketplace?
Absolutely. There isn't a day that goes by at Alliance Defending Freedom where we don't get many calls that have to do with someone who's being forced to choose between their conscience and their business or their profession, their vocation, their license. In fact, I checked my email before we came in. One just came in an hour ago. Same situation as the people here. This is not an isolated situation, and we need to wake up and call it for what it is.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, this morning I was sitting in my hotel room, and late last night, one of those religious liberty stories came came over the phone. And again, it's a small mom-and-pop Christian bakery in Texas. And if you read my column today, you'll find all the details about that. But they came under attack for not providing a cake for a gay wedding. Mm-hmm. So these things are happening all across the country, folks. And I think this probably leads to the most important question of this session. And that is, what can Christian broadcasters do to help us?
One of the things that we've been talking about on our legal advocacy team with our lawyers is that if something isn't culturally plausible, it's probably not legally possible right now. So there have been seasons in our nation's history where culture has followed law and where law has followed culture. Right now, I think it's unquestionably, we're in a season where law is following culture, which means we have to make this culturally plausible to have a right of conscience. Be able to demonstrate that we as Christians can love people, but still take a stand. And I guess one of the reasons that I was so glad to be able to come here today is a book that had a real profound impact on my life was a book by Andy Crouch, and it's called Culture Making. And he talks about how we as Christians have a role to play in making and creating culture, and that culture is a good thing. It doesn't have to be Christian art. It doesn't have to be a Christian movie. It just needs to be good culture, positive, holistic. And I think that's what the people in the audience are about. We need more educators. We need more artists. We need more entertainers. We need to win back culture. And I would say we need you to engage, to tell the stories in a winsome way. Accurate, but winsome. Be a storyteller and tell the narrative, because we win when the truth gets out.
Well, you're absolutely right, and that is imperative for us to tell compelling stories. And one of the things I love about Alliance Defending Freedom is they bring those stories to us. And I know I subscribe to their news release list, and we get those on a pretty daily basis. I've already gotten 2 today from you guys. But I would encourage you guys to sign up for ADF's newsletters so that you can, again, engage the culture and stay informed and educate your listeners and your viewers, the people that are also reading your work on digital platforms. It is just incredibly important. And as a fellow broadcaster, I think that the storytelling part of this is most important, because let's be honest, if you have read the stories that the mainstream media has done on these folks up here, they're, right-wing, homophobic bigots, they're haters. You think they would come here dressed in like robes and bed sheets, with pointy hats. But that's what the mainstream media wants you to believe. But we know that there's another story there. And we're able to tell that story at Fox News, and I know that you'll be able to tell those stories on your platforms as well. But it's imperative that we do that. That is our piece of this puzzle as we fight this war on religious liberty together. Some final thoughts, Kristen.
It's a privilege to be here, and sometimes, I'm thinking it's easy to look at what's going on in this unique time of history and the presidential politics and Justice Scalia's passing, and to just think, what is happening here? I don't even understand this country that we're living in. And I guess I would just encourage you, for such a time as this, how great is it that God trusted us enough to live now in this unprecedented time of our nation? He trusted us to be here and to man our stations. And at ADF, we have a different station than you do, but you have a station. So I just want to encourage you, man it for such a time as this, and let's influence our nation and the world, because we lead the world.
You mentioned the 2016 presidential election, and I've come off the campaign trail to hang out with you fine folks and actually get a lot of prayer. I tell you, sweet Lord, it's a circus, isn't it, folks? Oh, sweet mercy. Greg, we all may need a prescription. Can we come and can you help us? But as crazy as it is, and of course there's a big debate tonight, and we'll be doing a viewing. There's a viewing party that NRB is hosting. As crazy as things are, this is so incredibly important, if but for one reason. Who do you want putting a justice on the Supreme Court? That's what needs to be on the top of your mind when you're walking in and voting in your primary during the primary season. Who do you want putting justices on the Supreme Court? Because, folks, I'm telling you, we are in a very precarious position as a nation right now. And praise the Lord for organizations like Alliance Defending Freedom. These folks could be out there making the huge bucks on Wall Street or, in some of the highest legal firms in the nation, but they're giving their gifts to the Lord, and they're serving Him and helping find brothers and sisters in Christ. And not just brothers and sisters in Christ, these are our fellow countrymen up here. And trust me when I say this, folks, one day it might be someone in your church. It might be somebody in your neighborhood. It might be somebody whose kid plays on your Little League team. It might be you. And that's why I encourage you, after our session concludes here in the next few moments, to go downstairs to the Expo Center, and I want you to visit the Alliance Defending Freedom booth, and I want you to get as much information as you can from these folks. And I really hope that you take the time to visit with them and also encourage them, because they're doing a tough job, and they could use our prayers. And also, I want you to do something. Before you leave here, I want you to write down these names. I want you to write down Blaine's name. I want you to write down Greg and Barronelle's name. And I know that many of you have a prayer time. Every day at my office at Fox News, I start my day with a little devotion time and prayer time. And I want you to write their names down. I want you to pray for them and pray for their families and pray for their businesses. Would you mind doing that? That's a way that we can come alongside and stand with them as they stand for religious liberty. Well, friends, I do want to thank you so much for coming this afternoon to our session. That's going to conclude our time this afternoon. And I want you to please give them just a warm round of applause and then come on down and say hello to them. Thank you all very much.